Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for June's Books in Focus, where we're going to talk about the most exciting books coming out in July. You have a handout in front of you. Patrick, Miranda, Nicole are going to lead you through a couple of things we recommend. We'd like to start out with some guaranteed bestsellers.
Can I ask a question? What's happening in July?
I mean, Independence Day.
Independence Day,
the library.
so you're moving the nonfiction to the second.
Oh, Anne might be asking about our regular book discussions being slightly interrupted in July. You're absolutely right. So the library will be closed on July 4th in observation of Independence Day. And as you all know, we usually have the fiction book discussion on that first Tuesday of the month. In July, it will be on the second Tuesday of the month, so it'll be after your Books in Focus. So hopefully you will all join us for Books in Focus, and then maybe, I don't know, get lunch or run some errands, and come back for the fiction book discussion on July 11th.
Double whammy.
Yeah, all in one day, and you get to enjoy July 4th off, so that's wonderful. And then the nonfiction discussion will be on the regular day on that third Tuesday in July.
Okay.
Some guaranteed bestsellers coming out in July. Debbie Maycomer's newest Must Love Flowers focuses on two female main characters. Joan is an empty nester, and Maggie is a nursing student. These women are at very different points in their life, but they find ways to connect and support each other and discover what family can really mean. I don't know who this new James Patterson guy is, but he's got something coming out. Obsessed is the 15th in the Michael Bennett series. Detective Bennett is on the hunt for missing college student along the Hudson River. The other one, a little earlier in the month, looks like Circle of Death, is a sequel to his Shadow. Lamont is a vigilante of justice. He's assembling a team with unique talents to battle a new threat to the world, a ruthless killer trying to overturn order. To me, it sounds like Patterson's take on Batman, so that was a little interesting. The Collector by Daniel Silva. I think a lot of us read this. 23rd in the Gabrielle Allen series. Art restorer and spy, Gabrielle Allen is going to join forces with a beautiful master thief to find a missing painting. Dean Koontz's After Death is a standalone. Michael Mace is going to wake up in a morgue. He's in a research facility. He has a new power, and he helps a friend with his new power, and he draws the wrath of a local street gang. That's pretty much what I could say without giving too much away, I thought. 29 in the Hannah Swenson is the Pink Lemonade Cake Murder. She's of course gonna have some recipes in there, something fun. A lot of people love her at the library. During the Tri-County Summer Solstice celebration, Hannah is serving up yummy desserts, but the mood sours when a body of a retired MLB player is found, and Hannah's gonna help investigate. Crook Manifesto by Colson Whitehead, another local favorite. This is going to be a follow-up to Harlem Shuffle, which came out 2 years ago. It's all about 1970s New York and its greedy, seedy glory with crooked cops, counterculture, hustlers, and mobsters. And Zero Sum is the latest collection of stories by Joyce Carol Oates. These are going to focus on zero-sum games, often with fatal results. A situation where one person's game is equivalent to another person's loss, so the net change is zero, is what she means by the zero-sum games. And themes include erotic obsession, fallen idealism, and changing identities. So a really good mix of bestsellers coming out. Some nonfiction picks with Patrick. Picks with Patrick. What's that?
So first up, we have The Fourth Turning is Here. I don't know if any of you were familiar with the book The Fourth Turning. It came out in 1997. Neil Howe co-wrote that. So this is kind of a sequel, you could say. But in that book, they lay out a cyclical pattern of Anglo-American history that plays out every 80 to 100 years. So in this one, the author's giving his predictions about how our present era of civil unrest will resolve over the next 10 years and what our lives will look like once it has. So some prognosticating going on here. Bogey and McCall, this one, William J. Mann, he's a Hollywood biographer. You're going to get a deep and comprehensive look at Laura McCall and Humphrey Bogart and their romantic relationship. We've got another one on Jackie Kennedy coming out here. based on hundreds of interviews over a 30-year period, as well as previously unreleased material from the JFK Library. Random Acts of Medicine. This one is a work of science and medicine in which two doctors work together to reveal the hidden side of medicine and its effects on everyone who touches the healthcare system. The heat will kill you first. The author here is a journalist, and he's discussing a new understanding of heat and the impact that rising temperatures will have on our lives and on the planet. First to the front, this is the first biography of the first female war correspondent, or one of the first female war correspondents, Vicki Chappelle, whose career spanned from World War II through Vietnam. And then we have Behold the Monster. In this one, a journalist is detailing her interviews with a 79-year-old serial killer responsible for murdering approximately 90 women over 6 decades. Yes. And then lastly, we have Brothers and Sisters by Alan Paul. This is a narrative look at the Allman Brothers Band, specifically their most successful album, which was titled Brothers and Sisters. So it's about that, and it's also more generally just a portrait of that era in rock and roll and American history. It's the 50th anniversary of said album. So. Okay. Okay, Pig and Rose Stir Up Trouble. This one's a cozy mystery by Lauren Berenson. This is the second book in her newer series, the Peg and Rose series. Peg being a dog show judge in her 60s, and Rose her sister-in-law. In this one, Rose persuades Peg to sign up for a senior-focused dating site. Unfortunately, the handsome and witty match Peg falls for is killed in a hit and run shortly after they start dating. The police chalk it up as an accident, but the two women have their doubts, and all the more so as they start digging into this guy's background. So this is a good series if you love cozy mysteries, particularly those that are dog themed, I guess you could say. I have the first one displayed here, Peg and Rose Solve a Murder. So in that book, you'll meet Peg and Rose as they resolve to start over after years of bickering, and they join their local bridge club, after which one of the bridge players is found killed. Very much in the mystery and dog lovers vein, you could check out David Rosenfeld. His series is Andy Carpenter series. This is just one of the newer ones that we had on the shelf. But this series is about a mystery-solving defense attorney who eventually heads up a dog rescue organization.
So Small World reads like Rosewater and Queenie. All three of these are going to have strong central characters with immigration stories and realistic modern social issues. Small World takes place over 3 summers with Stephen, a first generation Londoner born to Guyanan immigrant parents. Stephen feels pressure to follow the university track and move out of his home like most kids do at this age, but music is calling his name. His world and his future go through an unforeseeable change, and he's faced with big life decisions and needs to carve his own individual path. Now these two have strong female characters, but similar stories and similar positive reviews for great writing style.
So this is The Beasts of Paris. It is a historical fiction novel. It's described as a dazzling panoramic novel of love and survival set against the siege of Paris in 1870 during the Franco-Prussian War. We follow a diverse cast of characters who find themselves caught up in the chaos of war. There's Anne, Lawrence, and Ellis, and they friends as they struggle through the ebb and flow of history, experiencing loss, growing, and fighting their own demons. The first read-alike I have for this is Siege by Helen Dunmore. It is a similar story of a small group of individuals putting up with a siege of their city. This is set during 1941 and the siege of Leningrad. Leningrad claimed the lives of 600,000. It is a bleak and gritty story, but it's heartwarming, full of courage and resourcefulness of the Levin family. The other read-alike I have is The Dream Lover by Elizabeth Berg. This is a passionate and powerful novel based on the scandalous life of French novelist George Sand and her famous and diverse cast of lovers. It is set in Paris between the 1830s and 1840s, so it has a very similar setting, of course, in the City of Lights. This one, you're still stuck with me, sorry guys. So we had the spare room last time. This time we have the guest room. Hopefully we'll get to the foyer later. And then, so this is the guest room. It is a thriller. The unknown can lead to fear and curiosity. It is the latter for our protagonist Tess, who has to rent out her sister's old room to make ends meet. Tess ends up going through this the salacious diary of her new lodger, Erin, which seems harmless at first and momentarily satisfies her curiosity until things take a turn. She continues to read and it becomes creepy and uncertain as far as who is watching who. The first read-alike I have, which is all about stalking, is You by Caroline Capuens. Unfortunately, this one has since been checked out as of yesterday afternoon. So it is a fun and compelling read. It has a similar menacing and uncertain tone that focuses on stalkers. Our protagonist in this one is Joe. He's instantly smitten with Guinevere Beck after a chance interaction at a bookshop, and he believes he can win her heart if only he can infiltrate her life. So it's just very unsettling. And then The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney has also a similar tone and looks at someone moving into a new environment. Jane is looking for a fresh start after a personal tragedy, and she finds herself drawn to 1 Fulgate Street. It seems like the perfect apartment to get a fresh start. Moving in, she learns about the untimely death of the previous tenant, a woman who has also gone through a similar tragedy, and she discovers that she and the girl before her have way too many things in common. All three of these are described as very compelling and atmospheric reads.
Nicole Flatterly's second book. It's described as original and mordantly funny coming-of-age novel focusing on a teenage girl drawn to Andy Warhol's factory in the 1960s. Main character, 17-year-old Meg, is not really enjoying high school. Her mom is struggling, and she's seeking some escapism and some extra pocket money, like all 17-year-olds. So, on a chance encounter, May impresses the elusive Andy Warhol and is tasked with transcribing audio recordings of conversations and events with some of his famous friends. May becomes increasingly immersed in Warhol's world and tales and needs to figure out her own place in the world. This book should appeal to fans of Sally Rooney. A Beautiful World, Where Are You? Is a lot of conversations between friends around relationships that has this similar story of growing up and finding your place in the world. Slightly older main characters in this one. She's also comparable to Ottessa Moussavish for darker humor, and this is going to focus on an even older generation, but that still need to find your place in the world. This one revolves around a murder investigation and a middle-aged woman who's on her own and finding her way in the world. Excellent, intriguing reads for those that like to maybe a little bit smart with their books. The next one is going to be a sequel by Sophie Irwin. This is her first one, A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. Focus on here. fortune hunting. This is the first in the series, and maybe check it out before reading A Lady's Guide to Scandal. So, without giving too much away, friend Miss Eliza Balford from the first book is back. Some of the characters are following up 10 years in the future in this book, the sequel. Miss Eliza is an interesting and lovable character who is determined to pave her own way. Readers will find Miss Eliza not where they expected to at the end of this one. I'm not gonna say anything else. So it looks like in this book, there's a move ahead for her and unexpected opportunities and possible romantic rendezvous. It's a historical fiction with romance and a little bit of humor and interesting female characters. Similar to also on the new shelf, A Spinster's Guide to Danger and Dupes. This one focuses on Miss Poppy, who's unmarried. Her life is an illusion. She's putting on a front. She's actually a female crime reporter. So she's living an interesting life of her own.
So this is A Man of Lies by Ben Crane. It's described as a fast-paced debut that perfectly captures the near fatalistic tone of noir crime fiction. Our protagonist is Barnett Rye. Barnett Rye. He is a mob enforcer who is trying to rid himself of his underground lifestyle after his lover is murdered by his boss. It's described as witty and tightly plotted, and it explores the question of what it means to win and what it means to get revenge. The first read-alike I have is Gangsterland by Todd Goldberg. It is also a story about someone trying to outrun and organize crime. Sal is a legendary hitman in Chicago. When he botches a hit, he knows it means his death. With a little help and some plastic surgery, Sal becomes Rabbi Cohen. This is a darkly humorous, gritty novel about redemption and vengeance. The other is one, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this guy, but our other read-alike is The Firm by John Grisham. With a similar premise of a person trying to extricate themselves and their loved ones from organized crime. Mitch joins a seemingly prestigious firm in Memphis, and he and his wife Addie think they have finally made it. Except there's something else going on at the firm, and he discovers that nothing in life comes for free. All are fast-paced thrillers that will just pull you along, and you won't be able to put them down. First thing that actually popped into my head when reading the description for this was the Sting. Unfortunately, I can't sing the entertainment.
Okay. Lindsay Davis has a new one in her Flavia Albia mystery series. This is book 11. If you're not familiar with her, she also wrote another mystery series featuring the detective Marcus Didio Falco. So Flavia Alba is the adopted daughter of Marcus, and she has taken over her father's business as a private informer. So that's kind of the context here. So these books are set in 1st century Rome, and this one, Flavia is hired by her aunt to track down 2 deadbeats who owe her aunt money, and then the couple she's tracking down end up asking her to help them prove that one of their ancestors was indeed a freed slave. The more she digs, the more skeletons she finds in their closet, until murder in the past leads to murder in the present. Now it's serious, even deadly, and Albia has precious little time to uncover the truth. So the first in the Flavia Albia series is this one here, The Ides of April. And in that one, she is just getting started, trying to fill her father's shoes, and she's hired to investigate a fatal accident. But her client dies under mysterious circumstances. And then in a similar vein, you have Stephen Saylor's The Throne of Caesar. This one also features a ancient detective, if you will. Gordianus the Finder. And he's tasked to find out if there are any conspiracies against Julius Caesar's life.
So this is The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Guinevere Gornichek. It is about the lives of 2 women, one desperately trying to save her sister, the other destined to be Queen of Norway. They become intertwined in this spellbinding novel set during the early Viking Age, and it uses Norse mythology to enhance the world building in this epic fantasy fairy tale novel. It is both emotional and enchanting and explores the ideas of magic, the history that we think we know, and the things that bind us together. The first read-alike I have is The Evening and Morning by Ken Follett. He is a well-known historical fiction writer. It is a richly detailed novel set during the height of the Viking Age in 997 CE in Wales. It is a sweeping saga that follows the lives of 3 characters and how they intersect during this turbulent time in history. The other read-alike I have is The Half-Drowned King. It is the first in the series of the same name by Nina, and I'm not trying the second one, I'm sorry. It is the fictionalized story of King Herod. He is the first king of Norway. It is a story of compelling political intrigues and the battle for power in descriptive prose. So this is The Little Village of Book Lovers by Nina George. It's set in a rural town in the south of Paris, or in the south of France in the 1960s. Marie Jean has discovered she has the power to see love. Tiny glowing lights on faces and hands that shimmer when it is close. It doesn't take long for her to become a matchmaker, especially as she and her foster father begin a mobile library. It's described as a tender, lyrical standalone novel. The first read-alike I have is also by Nina George. It is The Little Paris Bookshop. It has similar tones and themes, and is also set in France. It centers around books and a protagonist who can see which books specific individuals need to help them through their strife, except for he can't seem to find one for himself. So it is a perfect read-alike to introduce you to her style and just general kind of themes of writing. The other I have is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. With a similar heartwarming tone, we find and follow Anthony Peardrew, who rescues lost objects after he carelessly loses a keepsake from his fiancée who unexpectedly dies. This is a charming and quietly moving novel of the possibilities of promises made and the magic that connects us together with stuff.
Murder Wheel. Okay. London, 1938. Lawyer Edmund Ibs is trying to find evidence that his client, Carla Dean, is not the person who shot her husband while the 2 of them were at the top of the Ferris wheel. Okay? He's gonna need a lot of luck. As he's digging deeper and deeper, the case, of course, becomes more complex. Edmund is stuck in this nightmare case, and of course, accidentally finds himself making it worse. He gets involved in another seemingly impossible crime. So this one sounds a little far-fetched, but at least it's a very unique setting, and I know some of us like historical components to our mysteries as well. These are also some dark reads with unique settings, kind of locked-in setting. I think Daisy Darker takes place on an island. There's a murder. They have to figure out which of the family members did it. And Hyde is this kind of cat and mouse survival game, and they're trying to win a prize. So really dark themes, really unique settings, impossible odds for a darker read. And then on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, I think The Sweetest Revenge is going to be an excellent beach read. It's going to read like really popular Ali Hazelwood and Emily Henry's books. Light, fluffy, comedic, interesting, great relationships, great punchlines, little surprises. Makes me just want to pour margarita and get my lawn chair out and all that kind of good stuff. Somebody else is going to have to check out the murder wheel is what I'm saying, because I'm not going that way. So this one takes place in London. It's a heartfelt story of a handsome neighbor, a no-good ex-boyfriend, and the summer Amy Duffy started over. Amy Duffy's past is a mess. She's longing for a fresh start. She's just turned 30. She's determined to make it a great year, despite a crappy job and a crappy ex-boyfriend. It's filled with twists and funny turns, and The Sweetest Revenge is going to be the new hot contemporary romance hit.
We've all been there, right?
I'm guessing there's gonna be some drinking involved. Just gonna,
How Can I Help You by Laura Sims. This one's a psychological thriller with messy and complicated characters set in a Midwestern library. Okay, we got dual female narrators. You have Margot, the middle-aged library clerk with a dark past. She's laughing because it's a little too close to home. She's a former nurse with many former patients who died under suspicious circumstances. And then you have Patricia, a young new hire who notices something sinister about her older coworker and can't resist digging deeper. So we have themes of the dark side of human nature, the dangers of obsession. The author is herself a part-time librarian. I've got my books up here. A couple read-alikes. So first we have My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. This is about a seemingly normal husband and wife who spice up their marriage with a little murder. And then you have The Secrets She Keeps by Michael Robotham. This one's also a psychological thriller told in alternating perspectives of its two female characters. It's about a lonely, pregnant grocery store clerk, the young, privileged, and also pregnant young woman she becomes fixated with, and the dark places their relationship leads. Okay. Sucker by Daniel Hornsby. This is Hornsby's second novel. The first one was called Via Negativa. I don't know if you've heard of it. This is described as an entertaining, funny, original, and my favorite, gonzo novel. You have Chuck Gross as the main character. He's the son of a billionaire labor exploiter, and he has to get a real job after his father threatens to cut him off. He signs on with this biotech company of a college friend, and this company is promising immortality. Chuck begins to discover that there's much more to this company, Kenosis, than what is publicly advertised, and he has to convince his father of such before it's too late. The Olivia Watts character, who is the CEO of Kenosis, it's been said she's kind of like a fictionalized version of Elizabeth Holmes, of Theranos notoriety, who recently got sent to prison. So this is kind of a satirical look at Silicon Valley and the super wealthy. So I brought Bad Blood, which is a nonfiction book about Elizabeth Holmes and the whole Theranos thing. Also, Imposter Syndrome by Kathy Wang. This is another satire about the fiercely competitive world of women in Silicon Valley. And then lastly, I don't know if it was obvious from my description or from the artwork, but you have kind of the vampire theme going on here. So Vampire Weekend. This one's also kind of a humorous story with that vampire motif. This one's about a solitary vampire who connects with her nephew over a shared love of boozing.
The Lady from Burma is the fifth in this Alison Montclair series. This is the first one, if you haven't tried these yet, The Right Sort of Man. We do have a whole series here on the show. Loved it. I was cute. I'm not surprised to hear that. I mean, Kara Black's got the blurb right here. Tons of appeal factors to this one. So for anyone that hasn't checked it out, I'll go over a little bit of the backstory. In each of the stories, murder finds the proprietors of the Right Sort of Marriage Bureau, dangerous post-World War II London. Two unlikely partners have teamed up for their business venture, the Right Sort of Marriage Bureau, which is sort of a matchmaker, a start-over system. It's run by Miss Sparks, a former intelligence agent, and Mrs. Bainbridge, a war widow with a complicated family. And their newest client is a bit unusual. She's trying to find a new wife for her husband, as she's found out she's dying of cancer. Soon after, she's found dead. Was it a suicide? Before they can quite figure out what's going on, the next week the woman's conservator is found dead, which points the finger back to the women running the agency that was helping her with her personal stuff. Needing to figure out what happened to defend themselves, their business, and their other clients, Miss Sparks and Mrs. Brisbane are once again on the case. Here's another series, Intrigue in Istanbul. This is also a historical mystery piece with strong female characters trying to solve crime, really interesting setting that I thought might appeal to everyone as well. That's on the new shelf. The next one, let's see, How to Love Your Daughter. Hilla Blum, this is her US debut. She's been published internationally before. She's lived a lot of interesting places, born in Jerusalem, lived in Hawaii, Paris, and New York with a background in journalism, and she's currently a book editor. So in this one, How to Love Your Daughter, it's a moving exploration of a relationship between a woman and her grown daughter. This woman will examine what we accidentally do when we are blinded by love. The main character in this story has never met her grandchildren, but occasionally peeks in from afar. And we get peeks into her life with her daughter and their past together in some flashback vignette style stories. The author Bloom gives us the seemingly insignificant and large deceptions in this intriguing family story. Kirkus reviews say it is part detective story, part morality tale, and the story of the damaged being damaged. So it sounds like a really moving, maybe a lot more difficult to read than some of our picks. Really interesting family saga. It's gonna remind me of The Marsh Queen. This came out last year. This was a daughter who's forced to move home to take care of her mother and move her out of her house, and secrets are unveiled and their relationship is hopefully repaired, at least worked on, we'll say that. And this little piece on the new shelf caught my eye. In the time of our history, which is the daughter returning home on the anniversary of the sister's death, mother and daughter must confront hard truths and try to move forward. And this is an Iranian family coming back together.
So this is Splinter in the Sky by Kemi Ashing-Iwa. It is described as an exciting debut sci-fi spy thriller space opera. Yep. I don't know how many more words I can fit in there, but I have a later pick that I might be able to. It is about a tea expert turned assassin who embarks on a mission to save her sibling and exact vengeance. There's diverse, well-developed characters, some unique world building, and a smooth, refined prose that promises that this debut will be a gripping read and a good cup of tea. The first read-alike I have that has similar themes about overthrowing an evil empire and themes of colonialism is A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. Our protagonist is Ambassador Mahit, who arrives at the center of the empire only to discover that her predecessor has died, conveniently timed for those in power. This is a sweeping sci-fi mystery with a diverse cast of characters and a well-crafted world as well. And then the other read-alike I have is Star Wars, Verily A New Hope. This is the familiar story of A New Hope, but told in Shakespearean verse. So yes, it is quite fun, and it has also a sweeping narrative about good versus evil. Yay, Verily. I Did It For You by Amy Engel is a thriller. It is a twisting and captivating thriller where a woman returns to her rural hometown where her sister was murdered more than a decade ago in pursuit of a seemingly copycat killer on the loose. It is a riveting mystery about the deep exploration of guilt, loss, and how violent crime can change both the family of the victim and the family of the killer. The first read-alike I have is The Familiar Dark, also by Amy, with similar themes of the impact violent crimes can have. It is a deeply compelling story also about the bonds of family and women doing their best for their daughters. And then there's Jackal by Aaron E. Adams, with similar themes of the past coming back. It is this chilling story of a white town in the Rust Belt where young black women go missing in the woods. There's evil in the forest, and it is creeping closer. It is a fast-paced, atmospheric novel about a thought-provoking subject set in the Midwest. It was the nominee for the Best Mystery and Thriller for 2022, Best Debut for 2022, and actually, Aaron Adams, I believe, was a student of Ruth Ozeki, which is pretty cool, and she helped to get this book published. It was her debut novel.
Thomas is Rachel Eliza Gibbons' debut. She's pulled some really strong praise being compared to Jemison Ward's beautiful lyrical moving writing styles. She's also previously been published poetry, so that maybe speaks to her writing style a little bit. Jim Crow wasn't an only Southern issue. In this gorgeous and heart-stopping account of casual racism, we're going to focus on a black family in 1950s Maine. Main character Cindy's 13, bookish. She's having a perfect summer in 1957. School returns, and she is getting a little older, and she has a growing awareness of the hardships her family are facing, including her older sister, Eliza. We're gonna learn more about the family's history. We're gonna see how neighbors cope by relying on each other and friends, and we're gonna see a great account of how parents instill pride and strength in their children, even in the darkest of surroundings. The story also makes me think of Memphis, which is three generations of a Memphis family seen through the eyes of 10-year-old Joan.
Alchemy of a Blackbird. This one's a mystical, enchanting, intricately crafted novel that is based on a true story. 20th century painters and occultists. Remedios Varo, who was a Spanish surrealist, and Leonora Carrington. In 1939, after the Nazi invasion, Remedios is forced to flee from Paris to the countryside, where she learns about tarot reading. Then she and her lover flee to Mexico, where her friend Leonora has also fled, and there the two women create their own occult practices. So if you're looking for something to do this weekend, here's an idea. Full of stunning detail about historical tarot practices, the Surrealist movement's treatment of women creatives, and thriving artistic and intellectual community in post-war Mexico, Macmillan's novel tells of two real-life artists seeking to create despite being stifled by societal norms surrounding gender and class. First read alike is The Age of Light by Whitney Scherer. This is a novel inspired by the life of the Vogue model turned renowned photographer, Lee Miller, as she relocates to 1929 Paris and becomes the muse and colleague of the mercurial surrealist Man Ray. Also, we have Z by Therese Fowler. This is a novel inspired by the marriage of F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda. And the literary party scenes of New York, Paris, and the French Riviera. Okay, Thicker Than Water by Megan Collins. This is a twisty thriller, moody and atmospheric. Best friends and sisters-in-law Julia and Sienna are the main characters here, and the narrative switches between their 2 points of view. Jason, Julia's husband, Sienna's brother, becomes the primary suspect in the murder of his boss. And so the two women have to work together to try and clear his name. As they do so, their friendship is tested as Sienna loyally maintains Jason's innocence, but Julia begins to doubt her husband. So we got a complicated female friendship going on here. If that sounds of interest, you might also try A Simple Favor by Darcy Bell. This one is a debut thriller in which a single mother's life is turned upside down when her best friend vanishes. And then Defending Jacob, this one's more of a legal thriller about a district attorney who seeks to defend and protect his teenage son who has been accused of murder.
Mistress of the Bahati House is in a series. It's the fourth in a series. The first is going to be The Widows of Malabar Hill.
That was good.
This one does sound really intriguing as well. A historical mystery series featuring an extraordinary female lawyer in the 1920s Bombay. So it's going to pull the same characters from the series. At a fundraiser party for the New Women's Hospital, the grandson of Lord Bahame, an influential aristocrat, is birthed badly. So a young servant, Suanna, tries to help him. Soon she is dismissed from her house and her job and charged with child murder, the term for abortion at the time. Series main character Praveen, Bombay's only female lawyer, And she's only able to work because she works for her father. I guess there's a lot of research that went into this, and it's inspired by the real first female lawyers in India, so it was really an interesting thing to dive into. So our main character, Praveen, the female lawyer, is gonna take on Suandra as a client. And since Suandra has nowhere to go, she's been dismissed from her job, she's gonna be invited to live with Praveen and her family. Praveen's home is full of family members and the accompanying tension. For example, Praveen's sister is a new mom. Praveen's father isn't happy about the accused murderer staying in his home, and Praveen herself is navigating a new relationship with a handsome librarian. So the quarters that the servant is staying in is set ablaze one night, and Praveen has extra pressure to prove her innocence before anyone else gets hurt. The series has been well researched. It's won a couple mystery awards as well. I think it's got a lot of great appeal factors. I think people who enjoy Lisa C for interesting historical research-based female characters in Asia would also really enjoy
That's
this.
also good, and we're gonna go see her.
She's going to Delaware. It's tomorrow. Her new one, it's all checked out right now, of course. Sounds really great. Spoke on it last time. The Circle.
Lady Tan's Circle of Women.
You have to get on the hold list for that one too. This one, The Possibilities. Debut novel. What if the life you didn't live was just as real as the one you did? It's kind of the tagline for this book. Hannah's having a bad day, an endless bad day. Feels more like a bad year. Her son Jack is 8 months old. She loves him more than anything, but since the birth wasn't very easy, she can't help her mind from wandering from what could have happened. Had she not made it, had he not made it? These haunting ideas are making her husband question her mental health, and Hannah is haunted by a feeling that something else is amiss, something else is going on, something's following her. Hannah's worst nightmare comes true and Jack disappears from his crib. She taps into an extraordinary secret ability she never knew she had, and she travels back through parallel versions of her life in order to find Jack. Really interesting take on a fantasy, I think, or a science fiction. So this sounds to me like The Night Shift. This came out last year. This follows our main character through hidden back doors all over New York City to jump through. She's trying to find a happier future for herself. Really interesting. I like this one, well written. It also made me pull the psychology of time travel. 1967, 4 female scientists have begun groundbreaking work on time travel. Something goes awry, and in the future, a family member, one of the granddaughters, is researching her grandmother's history, and some mysteries ensue, and she begins to investigate her grandmother.
Okay, Every Rising Sun. This one's a debut, 14 years in the making. This is a new riveting take on 1001 Nights. So, 12th century Persia. It's told from the perspective of Scheherazade, who witnesses the king's wife engaged in an affair, tells the king, he gets mad, kills the queen, and then starts marrying a new wife every night, beheading them as well. So, so partly out of guilt, and as well out of a hope that she can change the king's heart, our protagonist, Scheherazade, persuades her father, who's the king's advisor, to make her the next bride-to-be. And it's her gift for storytelling that enables her to survive the wedding night. The king essentially sparing her life so that he can hear more. For Read-Alikes, I brought one other retelling of the same story, The Wrath and the Dawn. In this version, she volunteers to be the next bride to avenge the death of her best friend, who was one of the king's earlier wives. And then also, if you like this kind of thing, you could try one of the many myth retellings that have been coming out, one of which is here, Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This one's about the princess of Crete, who risks everything for love and helps Theseus kill her bloodthirsty brother, the Minotaur. Okay, Nobody's Fool. This one is basically all about the psychology of deception. It's been called informative, illuminating, and entertaining. So the authors are both psychologists, and they're seeking to explain the science of cons and how we can avoid them. In the book, they identify 10 specific features of our psychology that make us vulnerable to being tricked. And they combine entertaining stories and real-life examples like Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme with scientific research. Kirkus calls this one an outstanding guide to nonsense for critical readers. They wrote an earlier book that I have up here called The Invisible Gorilla, very much in the same vein. In this one, they're examining misperception and understanding and seeking to help people conquer faulty thinking. And then Off the Edge by Kelly Wheel. This tells the history of the Flat Earth movement and seeks to explain why people believe these kinds of conspiracy theories. Okay, Wasteland. Subtitle here is The Secret World of Waste and the Urgent Search for a Cleaner Future. This one is an alarming expose type book. You have an investigative journalist. The author is an editor at GQ. And he's writing about the global waste crisis and answers the question, what really happens to what we throw away? He takes the reader into the secretive multi-billion-dollar waste industry. He also details his own attempts to reduce his waste output. He explores sewer systems and visits recycling plants, and he climbs mountains of garbage. So obviously this one's big on environmentalism. A couple similar reads, you have Rust by Waldman. In this one, you have an environmental journalist who's facing the historical war against rust, revealing how rust-related damage costs more than all other natural disasters combined. And in a similar vein, The Fate of Food by Amanda Little, another journalist author. She's addressing the global food supply and talks about sustainable food and the people on the front lines of food science.
The Country of the Blind, a memoir at the end of sight by Andrew Leland, is a witty, thought-provoking personal narrative about Andrew Leland's transition from sightedness to blindness and his quest to understand and learn more about blindness as a rich culture all of its own. It's described as warm, hilarious, book brimming with personal revelations. This book serves as an intellectual, I'm trying to read the notes, as an intellectually exhilarating tour of a way of being that most of us have not considered. The first read-alike I have, and a little bit of a plug for our upcoming nonfiction book discussion, is Deaf Utopia by Niall DeMarco. Yes, please come to our nonfiction book discussion. It has a similar focus on a vibrant community that often goes unnoticed and underappreciated. It is his memoir. He was born deaf into a large Italian family, and this is his story of self-discovery as he works to break into show business and beyond. The other read-alike I had, my thought was something that goes transitioning from one way of being to another, and my thought of the most universal thing that we all do is age. So my other read-alike is Old Age, A Beginner's Guide by Michael Kingsley. It is a collection of essays that ruminate on transitioning from young to old, disease, fame, and legacy. It is lighthearted and thought-provoking about aging as we all move forward. So, Life on Other Planets, a memoir of finding my place in the universe by Amwa Shields. Dr. Shields is an astronomer, astrobiologist, and a classically trained actor. This book is her journey of self-discovery about life on this world as well as other planets, and her life's work. It is a story about creating a space that makes space for joy, wisdom, and wonder as we explore with Dr. Shields the biggest question out there: are we alone in the universe? The first read-alike I have is A Very Short History of Life on Earth, 4.6 billion years in 12 pithy chapters by Henry Gee. It stands to reason that if we are going to try to understand the possibility of life on other planets, we might want to have an idea of how it came to be here. This book is filled with infectious enthusiasm and intellectual rigor, and it looks to speak to specifically that. It zips through the last 4.6 billion years to tell you the story of how life as we know it came to be. And I'm taking a deep breath now. The next read-alike I have is The Mission, or how a disciple of Carl Sagan, an ex-motocross racer, a Texas Tea Party congressman, the world's worst typewriter saleswoman, a California mountain people, and an anonymous NASA functionary went to war with Mars, survived an insurgency at Saturn, traded blows with Washington, and stole a ride on an Alabama moon rocket to send a space robot to Jupiter in search of the second Garden of Eden at the bottom of an alien ocean inside a world of ice called Europa. A true story by David Brown, and I feel like I pretty much covered it, so that's gonna be the end of that one. But it's a fun and entertaining read about the mission to send probes to Jupiter, specifically Jupiter's moon, Europa. Sorry, I had to take a deep breath to get that one all out. This is Evidence of Things Seen, True Crime in an Era of Reckoning. It is a collection of essays that were edited by Sarah Weinman. True crime has grown substantially as an entertainment genre that prioritizes a clear narrative of victims wronged, police in pursuit, suspect apprehended, and justice delivered. But this book and the essays in it explore the many cases that are often ignored for not fitting into that structure. It is a thought-provoking, insightful collection of 14 essays from the most innovative crime writers, and explores tough questions about what this says about our society, the fact that true crime is such a popular entertainment genre. The first read-alike I have is Junk Science and the American Criminal Justice System by Chris M. Fabricant. This book is written by the founder of the Innocence Project. It looks at how forensic science and scientists have been perceived as infallible by American pop culture and how it has cost innocent people their lives. It looks at how prisoners are convicted by this junky science, things such as handwriting analysis and teeth bite analysis and things that have now been proven to be more on the end of pseudoscience, and their fight to overturn wrongful convictions. It is meticulously researched and nuanced, and provides a nuanced look at how our criminal justice system functions. I did not grab my final read-alikes. So the other two read-alikes I have here are An American Sherlock, Murder Forensics and the Birth of American CSI by Kate Winkler Dawson, and 18 Tiny Deaths, The Untold Story of Francis Glessner Lee and the Invention of Modern Forensics by Bruce Goldfarb. Both of these are very well-researched, accessibly written narrative nonfictions that explore two of the pioneers of forensic science and their impact on criminology. Both of the authors were granted access to archival records that had never been released before about these two individuals. And many of the techniques that they developed are actually still in use today.
Last but not least, we have Under the Eye of Power by Colin Dickey. How Fear of Secret Societies Shapes American Democracy. This one's a colorful and engrossing narrative. So the author here is described as a cultural historian, and in this book he's discussing what he sees as the recurring narrative commonly believed throughout American history that there are powerful secret groups that are conspiring to undermine the will of the people and the rule of law. Dickey argues that what history tells us is that such beliefs do not merely exist on the fringes of society, but are woven into the fabric of American democracy. He covers specifics from all the way back to the American Revolution to QAnon of today. It's a vivid and intriguing recontextualization of a misunderstood aspect of American history. He wrote an earlier book called The Unidentified. This one's about mythical monsters, alien encounters, and our obsession with the unexplained. And the book which image I forgot to print off, is Knowing What We Know by Simon Winchester. Winchester is an author who's written all sorts of interesting books about a variety of different topics. But this one specifically is about how humans have attained, stored, and disseminated knowledge from ancient times to today. And that one you can still find on the new shelf, although it's checked out now, but that's where you find it. It's his newest books. Becky has it, so you can hound her for it.
Which number is it? 25, 26?
So that does it for Books in Focus. As per usual, all the books mentioned are up here. Feel free to take them if you want to check any of them out. So, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.